Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to help you cut through all that noise and get right to the heart of complex topics. I'm Brian, and today we're going to be exploring something that seems to spark endless debates: animal protein versus plant protein.
Absolutely.
And joining me today is Chelsea. She's a nutritionist and she works with the Detox Health YouTube channel. If you find today's deep dive insightful present, please share it with your friends and family. It really helps us grow and reach more people. So Chelsea, this question that we're talking about today, it's a question that I feel like it's a rite of passage for anyone who's interested in nutrition. Is one type of protein superior, or can we achieve like a healthy balance between the two?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And the answer, like most things in nutrition, isn't black or white. So let's unpack the science a little bit.
No.
We know that all proteins, whether it's a juicy steak or a bowl of lentils, are made up of building blocks called amino acids. Our bodies need 20 different types, but 9 are considered essential. And that's because we can't produce them ourselves.
So those essential amino acids are like the VIP guests that our bodies need to make sure everything keeps running smoothly. And this is where the animal versus plant protein debate gets interesting, right? Because animal proteins are often considered a complete package. They have all 9 of these essential amino acids.
Exactly. Think of animal protein sources like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy. They're like that convenient all-in-one solution. But that doesn't mean that plant proteins are automatically relegated to second place. While many plant proteins may be incomplete, meaning they lack 1 or 2 of those essential amino acids, the key is combining different plant-based foods to create a complete protein profile.
So it's like assembling a puzzle, right? Making sure we have all the right pieces from a variety of those plant sources. So for example, I've heard that pairing grains like rice with legumes like beans can create a complete protein.
Absolutely. That classic combination of rice and beans, a staple in so many cultures, is a perfect illustration of how to create a complete protein from plant-based sources. And another example is combining hummus, made from chickpeas, with some whole wheat pita bread.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of getting caught up in this animal versus plant battle, it sounds like the real focus should be on making sure we're getting all of those essential amino acids, regardless of where they come from.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Variety is key when it comes to protein, especially if you're leaning towards a more plant-based approach.
Okay.
So let's dive into some examples of those protein powerhouses, both animal and plant-based.
Yes, please. I think everyone is familiar with the usual suspects. Chicken breast and salmon on the animal side, beans and tofu on the plant side. But I'm curious about those less obvious, maybe even surprising sources of complete protein. What are some of those?
Okay, here's where things get really interesting. Quinoa, an ancient grain that's gained a lot of popularity lately, is a complete protein, and it's also a good source of fiber and iron. And then you have buckwheat, another complete protein source that's often overlooked. It's gluten-free, and it adds this delightful nutty flavor to dishes. And then, for a real surprise, Ezekiel bread made from sprouted grains and legumes also boasts a complete protein profile.
Ezekiel bread, a complete protein. That's news to me. I'm already thinking about how I can incorporate that more. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the potential health benefits of focusing on one type of protein over the other.
Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room, the buzz surrounding plant-based diets and their potential health perks. Research has consistently linked diets high in plant protein to a range of benefits, including lower blood pressure, a healthier weight, and a reduced risk of stroke, certain cancers, and heart disease.
Wow, those are some significant benefits. So what makes plant-based diets so good for our health?
Well, it's not just about the protein itself, it's the whole package. Diets that are rich in plant protein are often packed with fiber, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, nutrients that play a vital role in overall well-being.
So it's not just about swapping out your steak for tofu, it's about embracing a wide variety of those nutrient-rich plant-based foods.
Exactly. Choosing an array of fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds provides a symphony of nutrients that work together to support our health. However, it's crucial to remember that plant-based doesn't automatically equal healthy. A diet centered around French fries and potato chips, while technically plant-based, wouldn't offer those same benefits.
That's a great point. It's the quality of those plant-based choices that really matters. Yeah. But before we go too deep into the world of plants, let's give animal protein its due. What are some unique advantages it offers?
Animal protein certainly has its own set of benefits. Fish, for example, is a stellar source of omega-3 fatty acids, those essential fats that contribute to heart and brain health.
Omega-3s are definitely having a moment, and for good reason.
Incredibly important. And let's not forget about animal protein's role in building and maintaining muscle mass, especially as we age. This becomes increasingly important as we get older and naturally start to lose muscle.
It sounds like both animal and plant proteins have their own strengths, making it less about choosing sides and more about understanding how to strategically incorporate both of them into our diets.
Precisely. And speaking of strategic incorporation, we can't ignore the red meat debate, a topic that always seems to stir up some controversy.
Oh, it certainly does. Red meat seems to be caught in this nutritional tug of war, right? With some people saying we should just eliminate it completely and others defending its place on the plate. So what does the science actually say about red meat consumption?
The research on red meat is more nuanced than headlines might suggest. Some studies have linked high red meat intake to an increased risk of heart disease and certain cancers, while others suggest that it's the processed kind we really need to be mindful of.
Okay, so what's the distinction between processed and unprocessed red meat? And why is one considered more problematic than the other?
So unprocessed red meat refers to fresh cuts of beef, pork, lamb, or veal. Essentially, meat in its most natural form. Processed red meat, on the other hand, has undergone various modifications like curing, smoking, or the addition of preservatives. Think bacon, sausage, hot dogs, and deli meats.
Okay, so we're talking about those convenience meats that are often loaded with sodium and other additives.
Exactly. And it's those additives like nitrates and sodium that are often implicated in those negative health effects associated with processed red meat.
So if we're going to include red meat in our diets, it sounds like sticking to those fresh, unprocessed cuts is really the way to go.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. But as with any food, moderation is key. You know, too much of even a good thing can tip the scales in the wrong direction.
That's a great reminder. So where does this leave us in the great protein debate? What's the bottom line for our listeners who are trying to make sense of all of this information?
Well, the big picture is that it's not about demonizing one type of protein or declaring a clear winner. Both animal and plant protein offer valuable nutrients and play a role in a healthy diet.
So it's really about finding that sweet spot, that personalized balance that works for our individual needs and preferences.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the benefits of both and then incorporating them wisely based on your individual health goals, your dietary preferences, and even your ethical considerations.
That makes a lot of sense. But how can our listeners actually put this knowledge into action? What are some practical tips for creating that balanced protein intake that includes both animal and plant sources?
One simple strategy is to aim for protein variety throughout the week. For example, you could enjoy fish for dinner one night, lentil soup the next, a chicken stir-fry another night, and so on. This way, you're ensuring that you're getting that diverse range of amino acids and other essential nutrients.
Okay, I like that approach. It also takes the pressure off feeling like we need to perfectly balance our protein intake at every single meal.
Exactly. Another tip is to think about blending plant and animal proteins within the same meal. So, for example, adding some beans to your ground beef when you're making tacos, or topping your salad with some grilled chicken or fish.
Oh, those are some great ideas. It sounds like there are endless possibilities when it comes to creating delicious and balanced meals that incorporate both types of protein. But before we get lost in recipe brainstorming, I want to bring up another important aspect of this discussion, sustainability.
Yeah, that's a crucial consideration. We can't ignore the environmental impact of our food choices.
Right, it's not just about what's on our plates, but also the impact those choices have on the planet.
Precisely. Livestock production, especially for red meat, is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, which, as we know, are driving climate change. Plant-based agriculture also has an environmental footprint, but it's generally lower than that of animal agriculture.
So if we're looking to make more sustainable choices, it sounds like leaning more towards plant-based proteins could be a good step in the right direction.
It definitely can be, but again, it's not just about switching to plant-based protein, it's also about choosing sustainably sourced animal protein when you do include it in your diet.
So what are some things we can look for when choosing animal products to make sure they're coming from more sustainable sources?
Keep an eye out for labels like grass-fed, pasture-raised, or organic, which generally indicate that those animals were raised in more humane and environmentally friendly conditions. You can also consider supporting local farmers and ranchers who prioritize sustainability in their practices.
Those are all great tips. It seems like there's a lot to consider when making choices about protein, from the nutritional value to that environmental impact.
It's a multifaceted issue, but that's what makes it so fascinating. And as we become more aware of these nuances, we can make more informed decisions that benefit both our health and the health of the planet.
I completely agree. So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, is there a final thought you want to leave our listeners with, something to ponder as they navigate this complex world of protein?
Yeah, here's something to chew on. What does a balanced protein intake look like for both you and the planet? How can you make choices that nourish your body while minimizing your environmental footprint? It's a question worth exploring as we all strive for a healthier and more sustainable future.
That's a great question to leave our listeners with, Chelsea. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into animal versus plant protein. We've explored the nutritional differences, the unique benefits of each, that red meat debate, and even touched on the sustainability aspect. But there's still so much more to uncover. So stay tuned for the second part of our deep dive, where we'll delve into topics like protein needs, common protein myths, and some delicious ways to incorporate both animal and plant proteins into your diet. And don't forget to subscribe to the Detox Health YouTube channel for more evidence-based health and nutrition information. Until next time, keep diving deep.
We've definitely covered a lot, haven't we? But the protein conversation's far from over.
That's right, we've set the stage. But now it's time to dig a little deeper and address some of the practical questions surrounding protein intake. So Chelsea, let's talk about how much protein we actually need. Is there kind of like a magic number that applies to everyone?
Not quite. Protein needs are surprisingly individual. They vary based on factors like age, activity level, and your overall health goals. However, there is a general recommendation for adults of 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Okay, so for someone who weighs, say, 150 pounds, that would translate to about 54 grams of protein per day.
Exactly. But remember, that's just a starting point. Someone who's highly active or trying to build muscle mass might need more, and individuals with certain medical conditions may need to adjust their intake as well. So it's always a good idea to consult with a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian to determine your specific protein needs.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in those general recommendations, but individualization is key. Now let's debunk some common protein myths. One I hear all the time is that plant-based protein is somehow inferior to animal protein.
That's a myth that needs to be retired, for sure. As we discussed earlier, a well-planned plant-based diet can absolutely provide all of the essential amino acids that your body needs. It might take a bit more effort to strategically combine those different plant protein sources, but it's entirely doable and delicious.
So no need to worry about missing out on essential nutrients if you're choosing a more plant-based approach.
Not at all. And, there's a wide variety of plant-based foods that are protein powerhouses. So think about legumes like lentils and beans, nuts and seeds like chia seeds and almonds, and even certain grains like quinoa and buckwheat.
Speaking of myths, there's also this persistent idea that you need to eat meat to build muscle.
The meat for muscles myth. While animal protein does tend to be a bit more efficient at stimulating muscle protein synthesis because of its amino acid profile, it's certainly not the only path to gains. Plenty of athletes and fitness enthusiasts thrive on plant-based diets and achieve impressive strength and muscle growth.
So it's more about getting enough protein from a variety of sources and having a solid training regimen.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another common question: protein timing. Is there a magic window after a workout when we absolutely need to consume protein?
Oh yeah, that's a huge one. It's a topic that has sparked endless debates in fitness circles. So what's your take on the importance of protein timing?
Well, there is some science behind the idea nutrient timing. Consuming protein shortly after a workout can help with muscle recovery and growth. However, it's not as rigid as some might believe. You don't need to chug a protein shake the second you finish your last rep. You have a window of a couple of hours to get that protein in.
Okay, so it's more about making sure we have adequate protein intake throughout the day rather than stressing about hitting a specific time window.
Exactly. And again, it's about finding what works best for you and your lifestyle. If you find that a post-workout protein shake helps you feel better and recover faster, then go for it. But if you prefer to get your protein from whole food sources throughout the day, that's perfectly fine too.
That's reassuring. It takes some of the pressure off. But let's talk about those people who might need a little extra protein boost, especially those who are following a more plant-based diet. Are there any specific strategies or supplements that you recommend?
There are definitely ways to bump up your protein intake if needed. Protein powders can be a convenient option, especially for those with busy schedules.
Yeah, protein powders seem to be everywhere these days. What are some things to look for when choosing a protein powder?
Well, it's important to read those labels carefully and choose a powder that aligns with your dietary needs and preferences. There are whey protein powders derived from milk, which are popular among those who consume dairy. And there's a growing array of plant-based protein powders made from sources like soy, pea protein, brown rice, or a blend of different plant proteins.
So there's something for everyone, whether you're following a vegan diet or simply looking to diversify your protein sources.
Exactly. And don't forget about those protein-rich whole foods that can easily be incorporated into snacks and meals. Greek yogurt, for example, is a protein powerhouse. A handful of nuts or a hard-boiled egg can be a quick and satisfying protein-rich snack. And for those who enjoy tofu or tempeh, these versatile soy-based products can be incorporated into a wide range of dishes.
So many delicious possibilities.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit and revisit this sustainability discussion. We talked about how livestock production, especially for red meat, has a significant environmental impact. Are there any specific choices consumers can make to kind of minimize their protein footprint?
That's a great question. One powerful approach is to simply reduce your overall consumption of animal products, particularly red meat. Even small reductions can make a difference.
So it's not necessarily about going completely vegan or vegetarian, but just being mindful of the frequency and quantity of animal products that we consume.
Exactly. And when you do choose animal protein, opt for those sustainably sourced options whenever possible. Look for those grass-fed, pasture-raised, or organic labels that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, it sounds like voting with our wallets can make a real difference.
It absolutely can. Supporting those farmers and producers who prioritize those ethical and sustainable practices sends a powerful message.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from protein needs and myth busting to practical tips and sustainability considerations. It's clear that protein is a very complex and fascinating nutrient that plays a vital role in our health and the health of our planet.
It really is. And the more we understand about protein, the better equipped we are to make those informed choices that benefit both ourselves and the environment.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, Chelsea, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any final nuggets of wisdom for our listeners?
Yeah, here's a parting thought. Don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to protein. Listen to your body. Pay attention to how different protein sources make you feel and adjust your intake based on your individual needs and goals.
That's great advice. We've covered a ton of information today, but the key takeaway is that protein, whether from animal or plant sources, is an essential nutrient that deserves a starring role in our diets. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap things up and leave you with some delicious inspiration for incorporating both animal and plant protein into your meals. And a gentle reminder to our listeners to subscribe to the Detox Health YouTube channel for more evidence-based health and nutrition information. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a protein journey, haven't we?
We have.
We've explored the science, debunked those myths, and talked about how sustainable different protein sources can be.
Absolutely.
We've covered a lot, but before we wrap things up, I think a quick recap of the key takeaways might be helpful, just to make sure everyone's walking away with a clear understanding of this whole protein puzzle.
Yeah, I agree.
So where do we even begin?
Okay, well, I think it's important to reiterate that both animal and plant proteins are valuable. They both have those unique benefits.
Right. And we talked about how plant protein isn't inferior, right?
Exactly.
That a well-planned plant-based diet can provide all of those essential amino acids that our bodies need.
Yeah. And we explored the potential health benefits associated with both types of protein, but emphasizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It all comes down to finding that balance that works for you, your needs and preferences.
Yeah, and we couldn't forget about the red meat debate, right?
Right? Yeah.
We separated the fact from fiction and talked about how important it is to choose fresh, unprocessed cuts if you're going to include red meat in your diet.
Absolutely. And of course, we talked about sustainability, encouraging our listeners to really think about the environmental impact of those protein choices.
Right. It's not just about us. It's about the planet as
Yeah.
well. So much to consider. But this is just the beginning.
It is, yeah.
There's always more to learn when it comes to protein.
Always.
Speaking of discovery, let's end on a delicious note.
Okay.
What are some of your favorite protein-packed meals or snacks?
Oh, I love smoothies. For a quick and easy protein boost, I usually blend some spinach berries, almond milk, and a scoop of plant-based protein powder. Just delicious and satisfying. Perfect way to start the day or refuel after a workout.
Oh, that sounds so good. I think I'm more of a savory person, so I love a good omelet packed with veggies and a sprinkle of cheese. And for a quick snack, hard-boiled eggs, I mean, they're portable, protein-rich, and so satisfying.
Those are all great options. Really just comes down to personal preference.
Well, Chelsea, thanks for joining us on this protein-packed journey. I think the main takeaway here is that both animal and plant protein have a place in our diets. We need to listen to our bodies, pay attention to our energy levels, and make sure we're getting enough protein based on our individual needs and goals. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And a gentle reminder to our listeners to subscribe to the Detox Health YouTube channel for more evidence-based insights and delicious recipes. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.